Hello, everybody. It is great to see you. Welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Social Innovation podcast. I hope you've had an amazing start to your week, but if not, we can kickstart that right here. I'm your host, Ian Kahende, and this is season 3, episode 1 of the Let's Talk Social Innovation podcast. Now, we're going to be doing things a little differently this year. I do have a bulletin board to go through of events going on in the greater Pittsburgh area and through the Office of Social Innovation of the Frederick C. Honors College. So let me get started with that. September 21st, building a beloved community from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the William Pitt Union Assembly Room. This is a peace building and nonviolence workshop. There will be free food. So you have extra incentive to come along. No reason not to be there. Again, I'll say it's September 21st from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Links to RSVP will be in the description. Next, September 25th, FHC Latinx/Hispanic Heritage Month celebration. We'll be doing a special screening of 2023's Problemista at 6:30 p.m. A list of Hispanic actors and actresses in this incredible short film. You do not want to miss it. RSVP will be in the description below. And lastly, Envisioning a Just Pittsburgh is doing its second call for artwork submitted. There is prize money to the top art selected. So do not be afraid. The link for Envisioning a Just Pittsburgh will be in the description. There's certain criteria that needs to be met. There are different categories for mediums of art. Check it out. See if it's something that interests you. And if it does, then go for it because there's no reason to not shoot for your goals. But anyways, bygones be bygones. Everything else aside, I have the incredible, amazing Dr. Toya Jones of the University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work and the founder of Healing Overflow with Dr. Toy, my sister podcast.
That's right.
We started at the same time. How are we doing today?
So good. You know what? We didn't only start at the same time. Ian, I wouldn't have the podcast without your help. So he'll be humble about it, but everything, I knew nothing about podcasting. I'm a therapist. I'm a professor. I'm a mom, not a podcaster. Like, I just want to talk about the things that I know that are important to people. And Ian said, well, you know what? I am a podcaster, so I will help you. And you help me without anything in return except for my gratitude and smiles. So you helped me get Healing Overflow into Pitt. I had the podcast during the pandemic because I felt like, okay, the community is hurting. Everyone needs some healing and some uplifting. So I did start it using StreamYard, sitting at my desk, but bringing it to Pitt and making it successful. I owe you a lot. So a lot of gratitude and thank you so much.
See, look,
this is like my bro now.
You already saying too much because I'm sure, as you can all see and hear, Dr. Toy is an incredible personality. There's nothing behind a podcast beyond the person that you're listening to. And there are very few voices I would rather hear than Dr. Toya Jones.
See what I'm talking about? So
it's all her, genuinely.
Thank you so much.
But people, for everybody watching and listening, format of the show is as it has always been. We will be going through Dr. Toy's upbringing, what's made her who she is, her greatest life advice. We'll have our artist spotlight in the middle, as we always do. And in the second half, we'll be talking about teaching and mental health in marginalized communities. So without further ado, take us from the beginning, Dr. Toy.
Hi, y'all. This is so cool to be on Ian's podcast because I'm a fan. I watch. And to be on the show and to actually just kind of talk about me, this is it's real different coming down to the same studio that I record my podcast as a guest, because I'm used to spotlighting folks, but also talking about their lives and walking through like what they've been through and how they've become who they are in that healing process. So for me to talk about myself, I don't seem like it, y'all, but I am a shy extrovert. I am very extroverted. And, you know, I run a whole program, Pitt Social Work, shout out BSW program. But I'm still like, oof. I like to be behind the scenes. I like to be, I'm humble by nature. And so I'm kind of like, I'm really just toy to me.
Mm,
So all the things that I've done, I feel like I'm supposed to do, to help others, and help others find their way. We're all in a place at some time in our lives where we're like, I'm not doing so good. I'm not all right. And to have somebody say, you know what, me too, I've been there, but now I'm all right. Let me show you that path. And then you get to that point and you can say the same for someone else. That's important life work for me. And so, um, you asked me to talk about my life and my childhood. Okay, that's kind of easy. But there's so many aspects that make me me, and there's so many parts of me. So, Ian, you're right. Like who you get behind a mic is me. I don't know how to pretend to be someone else. So
mm.
I tell my students, like, I don't know how to be collegiate, and I couldn't be president. I would just be like, "What's up, y'all? I'm president," because
Mhm.
that's me. I got a little home girl. I got a little professionalism. I'm all those folks. So I guess I'll start with, like, my upbringing. And I was raised by a mom and dad, and I have a sister, or older sister. I'm the youngest, so I have a lot of youngest
I was gonna
qualities.
say you got the youthful glow.
Oh,
That's how I
thank you.
say it.
I wasn't gonna say that, but thank you. No, I have the youngest qualities where I'm like, I'm fearless. I just do stuff. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just gonna do it anyway, like the podcast. There was something I knew I needed to do. So I was always kind of like that. I got like scars in different places because I was
Mm.
like, I'm jumping out the tree, see what happens. Like, I was one of them people, but I was always super curious. And so my dad is in a helping profession, and he's a professional musician too. He's the bass in the Marcells, which is an old doo-wop group, but they had like the number one hit in the world for consecutive weeks, and so that's Blue Moon. I always give a shout out, like, that's my dad. And he sings in the Marcells, and so growing up with music and theater in the house, that's probably why I'm able to be, an extrovert in front of people, because it's
Mhm.
it's almost like, okay, you're on. You got to give them something. What are you going to leave them with? So, a lot of times, even teaching in my classes or presenting, giving workshops and presentations, and the podcast, and just talking with people as a therapist, I'm on. I need to deliver this certain product. I guess I need to deliver this thing to you. So that, I felt like, being a public speaker and being able to stand up in front of people with a microphone. I'm a singer, so I just sing,
Mhm.
and that's not anything that I'm ever fearful of doing. So I think that's why I'm able to just talk to people. It's a gift, and so I always thank my dad for that. And my mom's a nurse, so another helping profession. She's a registered nurse.
You're like
So
a mix of the both of them, yeah.
I am. So I knew I was going to help people. Like, I'm going to help people in my life somehow. My mom's a fantastic nurse. She's super, super smart, like a brilliant chick. And just really helps people for a living. She's retired, but not really. She's still fighting violence, and
Mhm.
she's still doing like so many things in the community. And when the pandemic hit, she was out there giving vaccines and helping people to get the vaccine. So she's an exceptional woman. She's a boss. And so that, probably that boldness, a lot of that boldness comes from her, and a lot of, just the business mind, um both of them, but the classiness, the crispiness, that comes from them. So I was blessed with them. And my sister, she's my BFF and mentor, and she's a phenomenal singer as well. Shout out Nikki Porter. um she taught me a lot, just as being a big sister. And so going through life, being taught by someone who I think is just a phenomenal, she's a musician. She plays everything. Like, I can't play nothing. I don't know how that happened,
Mhm.
but she plays every instrument. She sings ridiculously. But to teach me just things, she has a great business smart too, but to teach me things throughout as a big sister, she is the best big sister. So I feel like I was really surrounded with a village, growing up in a neighborhood where everyone knew each other. Financially, we were up sometimes, and sometimes we were down. Like we always
Mhm.
said, we were eating beans and franks sometimes, and steaks another time. And I feel like that's the ebb and flow of Black community.
Do you have expensive taste now?
I don't. I'm really a social worker. Like I'm like, I don't need all that. What's all that for? That could help feed this and that. And I literally say stuff like that. Like, why pay all that? That could help feed a couple people. That could I'm just not elaborate. I like I like going to sales and thrift stores and getting
Hmm.
things. And then, and sometimes I'll pay money for things, but not really. Like I don't do all that. I like to drive a nice car, and that's probably going to be about it. I don't
Mm.
want to break down. But that, I think, came from even I experienced a house fire when I was a teenager, and I was sleeping, and my sister was there. My mom, being a nurse, had those odd hours, and I was in the bed, and I heard my sister yell. And she's not a very like I'm the expressive one in the family. I'm
Hmm.
super expressive, so I remember her waking me up, like, "Toy, get up! There is a fire!" Like she was just so calm, and I was like, "What?" And I could feel the heat on my face.
Hmm.
And so I got up and I ran. And that was my natural reaction, was just to run. I saw the pictures on the wall were melting. Like it was really hot in the house. I just ran out, went to the neighbors. We never moved back in, but our lives were saved. And
Hmm.
I thought about the things I lost in the fire. And that to me was my turning point of not being materialistic whatsoever. I'm like, literally, I could lose everything. So what? I've done that before. But the life is most important, and every living being that was in the house got out, and we were okay and got a new place to live and got new clothes and whatever. So that I think helped to mold me. Um, and being a therapist, I knew I wanted to be a therapist early,
Mm.
because that situation, I said, why did I run automatically? Like I knew I was just like, my feet were moving and I was flying out the door. And I remember wanting to stay and try to put the fire out, but my automatic pilot was like, get the heck out of the house.
Mhm.
My sister went back in with a hose with her crazy self, trying to put the fire out. And I remember yelling, like, get out of the house. And I remember that incident just year after year. And I remember being triggered by, I was in college. So when the fire alarm went off, I would just be like, just get really scared, and the trucks would come. And I remember just being afraid and having this like physical reaction. And I thought to myself, like, what is this? Because I didn't know anything about trauma. I didn't know anything, about how the mind worked at that point. I was in school to be a therapist. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I know this is what I want to do, but I have to learn more about what happened. And so that began my study of trauma. And I volunteered for a domestic violence sex assault shelter called the Alice Paul House. They still exist. They're fantastic. They gave me the training of a lifetime. And I learned how to deal with people's traumas, and I learned more. I've worked at a center for victims for many years and just learned more. That's in Pittsburgh. Learn more about trauma. And then now they call me a trauma expert. And I believe I'm a trauma expert because of the people I work with. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, the books were good. I got a bunch of degrees, but the people I work with taught me like everything. I know how to work with people that lost their loved ones to homicide, or who's been sexually violated, and just those things that people don't want to talk about. And that's why I love this podcast, because y'all talk about stuff like, okay, we don't want to talk about it. It makes you feel uncomfortable, but there's people actually doing this work out there. So um, that's that was it. And I was like, this is my life journey. This is what I've been plunked on this earth to do, and I know I got to do it. And I feel like everything that has happened to me, and everything that I am, and everyone that's been in my life helped to mold me to become this person, but not just for me, for people. For people that need what I have up here, and in my spirit and my soul. So I'm really grateful, like how my life turned out, because there's a lot of different directions that I felt like I could go,
Mhm.
but I didn't. I went the direction I felt pulled towards, and that was social work, teaching, therapy, things like that, and
I was gonna
helping
say,
people.
speaking of direction, why social work specifically?
So this is This is a story that I tell my students all the time, because I'll have students that come and they say, well, they're majoring in psychology or counseling, um, and they don't know if they should be in social work or not. And I kind of do this test, because I'm not out to try to steal anybody. I want you to be where you're supposed to be. You have to do what you want to do. But I am a full believer that you have to be drawn and you have to do your passion or you're not going to be successful. So the key to life, one of the keys, is to do what you love, and people are attracted to that. So money's attracted to that. Talking about your passion and doing your passion, joy is attracted to that. So then you just have happiness and joy and people in your lives that fulfill you, and instead of draining you just because you're doing your passion. If I go this way and do something else and I'm not passionate about it, I'm not going to draw that to me. And so social work came about because I was a psych major, and I'm not great in science. Like, I was good in some sciences, but not all. And I was like, I don't think this is it. Psychology is literally the science of the mind. That's what it means. And so I was like, yeah, I like that. I'm into the whole neural psych and abnormal psych, and I like that part. But then there was other areas where I'm like, that's not my strength. I do research now, but the research then I was like, this is not my strength. And I know where my strengths lie. And so I started to dig into social work. A friend of mine was a psych major at the time, and she said, just tell me what you want to do. Like, tell me what you're passionate about. And if you wake up in the morning, you got a smile on your face because you're going to do this. And I use that now. She is since deceased, but she became a psychologist and wrote books and all of that. And from our talk, she encouraged me. That's why I said I got my village. Like, people are placed in my life to help me. And we looked in this big, thick book. It was like this big back then. And we looked up different professions, and I read a description of social work. I compared it to psychology and other counseling. And social work grabbed me up like this, like, come here, girl. I was like, I love you. Because social work is like, you're not just studying someone or studying a mind or it's not just the pathology, it's the person in the environment. And that struck me like, wait, we're not just saying you have this diagnosis. Yes, you have this diagnosis because social workers, we diagnose folks. I'm a clinical social worker, so I diagnose people. I'm licensed to diagnose and to help people. But we look and say, what happened to this person? Now, what's wrong with them? Did they have some childhood trauma? Did you grow up in a neighborhood that was full of violence? So how can you walk around and be normal? How can you sleep normally if you hear gunshots outside your window? Um, if you've been sexually assaulted, how can you allow someone, just to come and touch you and not feel like you're outside of your body at times? Just these sort of things. And what kind of job do you have? And what's your community? And how's the community, playing upon what you're going through in your life? Is it adding to or taking away from what you're doing, going on in your life? So that's why social work attracted me. And also, my parents are activists. They still are. They're in their 70s. But back then, when my sister and I were younger, oh my goodness, how many marches?
Mhm.
I always say I was born with an afro and a tiny fist in the air. Like, we was out there just, marching
Got
and
that Boondocks energy.
trying
You're
to
like a little
tell
Huey.
you, trying to tell you. And that's why, I'm still so passionate about things. I can't get into political conversations half the time. I'm like, I can't look at our community. Like, I'm in a profession where there's not a whole lot of brown faces, but I'm always thinking about how are my brown faces doing out there in the community, Black and brown marginalized folk and BIPOC students. And, I'm thinking about that because that is me. I'm African American, I'm Black American, and I know our struggle. My parents went through the 60s and, the riots and assassinations and all those things. And so, even the books that we had in our childhood library were like fight the power. Like, we were
Mhm.
learning about ourselves and justice and things like that. And so that's all social work, you know. And so I knew that's what I want to be, but I also knew I need to be a therapist. I have this sense, like, I can feel people's pain. I can feel people's joy. I've always been that way. I would say things to my dad like, why is that person crying? I would notice like someone way across the restaurant, like they're sad. And he's
It's like your spidey sense.
yes. And he would be like, how do you pick that up? And he said, girl, you could see every snowflake. He would always say that you could see every aspect of the leaf. And at the time I was like, sure, I don't know what that meant. But now I know, I have that ability, but sometimes it's hard because I can't cut it off. I gotta help somebody that feel like they're hurting. Or I can feel the energy in my classroom. I'm like, are y'all tired? I can feel it. But that's really helpful as a therapist to be able to feel what the client is going through. I went from, and I still work with survivors, which that's folks that have been victimized. But I work with the incarcerated population and formerly incarcerated as well with my husband, Cornell Jones. Shout out. Uh, and we have a nonprofit organization called Operation Amani. And so we work with returning citizens because to me, they're not throwaway people. They're people. They're people that made some mistakes. And a lot of them are like, okay, I just need opportunity and choices. So let me take this other avenue. So that's been so fulfilling. So we line up, or I make sure I'm lining up stuff that is so gratifying and fulfilling to me, throughout my life. So that's social work. That's why. And social work, you can do so many things with. So it's easy for me to talk to people and potential students because I'm like, this is such a large umbrella. You can literally work for the government. I have a social work friend that works for Nassau. I get people that work in the courts. I work in the courts as a trauma expert witness in state and federal courts and things like that. And you can teach with the MSW. I got my doctorate just because I knew I was going to stay in academia, but you know, social work is such a large umbrella. You start your own business, nonprofit, for profit. I have a for profit. There's just so much you can do under the umbrella of social work, and you can get that big pay of helping people, and you do make money. That's a myth. You can make money.
So would you say that psychology is more the how while social work is the why?
So psychology goes into why, but it's more of the science of why. Like this is, and they'll talk about situational things, but it's very different than social work. Our approach is just different. And so and I have a degree in psych, so I went through the whole program and I felt like I got something from it, but it wasn't the actual direction that I wanted to go as far as, working within the community and working from this lens, this multicultural ecosystem type of lens. And psych is definitely going to do the research and study of the actual mind. We had to learn the mind parts. So I thought that was really interesting though. I'm like the cerebellum and all that kind of stuff. But they're just different lenses. And so, like I said, my friend in psych, she had a beautiful career, and I have a beautiful career. So it just has to be what you want. So I always tell students, look at the curriculum, look at every single class, look at the description, and make sure that's something that you want to do. It has to pull you. Social work calls you, and you have to be called to it.
So when did you know you were going to become a teacher?
So this is wild, Ian. I love your questions. They're rich. So I was sitting in the class in the MSW program. I am a grad of Pitt MSW program. So it's a trip to actually be teaching in the program. I teach in the BSW and the MSW program. So I was sitting there and my professor was dynamite, and she was talking and teaching. And I remember saying, I can do this. That was it. That was the thought. I can do this. And then, so one time, I think it's the youngest quality or the tenacity my parents taught me. But once I lock onto something, I'm going to reach that goal. Like a dog on a bone. I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. And so I finished my degree. I got my license, worked as a therapist, a trauma therapist, for many years, and then did some community therapy work while I was doing trauma therapy because I wanted to get a lot of experience before I start teaching. But my goal was like, I'm going to be a therapist and I'm going to teach at the college level. Like that's what I want to do. So eventually, the same professor that I said in that class, it was a cognitive behavioral therapy class that same one I contacted and said, hey, remember me? And I just kept in touch with her. And then I said, I want to teach. Like, is there any opportunities? And she's like, well, put your resume in and see what happens. And then it was a few years. So I was like, dang, this is taking too long. So my husband cornered the late Dean Larry Davis, and it was like Costco or Sam's Club or something. And he was like, my wife wants to teach.
That's infiltrating a safe space right there. I love my Costco.
You love your Costco.
I love my Costco.
He was like, put the ground meat down. I got to talk to you. And he, that's why it's so important. This could be a whole nother topic as far as, life partners. But it's so important to connect with the right life partner, because he's just planting and watering seeds, and I'm doing the same for him. But he was like, I'm going to get her to this goal, instead of standing in front of it. He's always championed my goals. And so he was like, she wants to teach. So he got a meeting with the dean, and he was like, come and just talk a bunch of social work type of stuff. So I said, okay. I went in there and just got all social worky. And then Dean Davis stopped me and said, do you want to teach? I was like, yes, I do. So I pulled out my resume because I stay ready.
Of course.
He took it over to somebody. I got a call the next day, got hired at Pitt as adjunct. I taught for like 1.5 semesters. I taught social working groups, and I taught CBT. And he said, we have a full-time position opening. Would you like to apply for that? I was like, oh my God. Yes. And I was doing full-time therapy for double-digit years. And leaving my clients hurt my soul, but I knew that was the next step. And so got the job, walked in to Pitt, very rigorous interview process. They hired me. And then I've been teaching ever since. So I've been here about 8 years teaching. And then running the bachelor program, got promoted maybe 4 years ago. Love my bachelor students. I love the program. We're top ranked, so I have to brag a little bit. It's a fantastic program, and so just getting to mentor and give back to social workers, I'm like, this is the life. This is such a great opportunity.
So from BASW to MSW to mainly doing therapy to teaching in academia,
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you would change about your journey?
No, like that. I felt like with every step, that's what I was supposed to do. And I did some things with fear. Like people think, oh, you're fearless. You do it. Well, I have a fearless quality, but some things after, that's why I mentioned after a semester and a half of adjunct, like that was the only teaching experience I had.
Mm-hmm.
Besides like doing presentations or workshops and things. It was totally different. Well, not totally, but a big difference. So I did that with fear. Like, I don't know enough. I don't think I can. Oh, shoot. What do I know? So I used those life experiences. I used what my clients taught me. I used from my books, and really, and did what I knew I was supposed to do. I followed my love and my heart. So I can't say that I would do anything differently. I'm really, really, to me, I feel so blessed. I feel so privileged. I do understand that a Black woman in America is supposed to be a double whammy, but I feel like I've definitely felt oppression and racism. I won't say I haven't, and sexism definitely. But I have such a beautiful village and such a like a healing purpose that it's like, oh, healing follows me, joy follows me. This is good. I'm like, come on, you're invited. So no, I wouldn't change anything. I definitely had some traumas, but it made me Toy. So Toy's my nickname to everybody, that's cool with me.
So last thing we're going to hit before our artist spotlight, Healing Overflow. How and why did that start?
Okay, so Healing Overflows literally feels like my third child. Like I have a teenage boy. I can't believe he's a senior. And I have a teenage girl. She's in the 8th grade, and they are, my pride and joy. So I have to talk about them a little bit. And I always talk about them in my class too. Probably because I'm just a transparent type of person. But healing, just watching them go through the pandemic was difficult. Like, my son is an introvert, so he was like, okay, I get to stay in my room all day,
Yeah.
do my homework. He's like this, I call him an egghead. He's so smart, and his study habits are bananas. Like, I did not have those study habits. I said, how do I have a doctorate and I'm a professor? And my study habits were like, oof. Until I got to get my master's, then I was great study habits, doctorate, great study habits. But undergrad, I was like, where's the fun?
Yeah.
So thank goodness they gave me my degree. I got my act together the last couple years, but that's why I tell people you don't have to be perfect. You can clean it up. So healing overflow came from just watching my children go through. Like, my daughter is an extrovert. She's a musician. She sings. She plays the crazy percussion. She's so good at this young age. And I watched her just like shrivel up a little bit, from being in the house all day and struggling, with the four of us just being in the house trying to work on this floor and that floor. And I was just noticing people just kind of picking up some depression symptoms and anxiety. And I start noticing some things in me. I was like, man, I'm not all right either. And I'm the therapist that knows the signs of stuff. And I was like, this looks like me, I'm not doing this okay. And just that fear of people getting COVID back then, COVID was like, you might not make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people that didn't make it. So I said, what if I just started some kind of outlet where we just talked about healing? Everything about healing. Let's talk about just some ways of like how you get through, how you making it, what works for you. Talk about people in their lives and how they got over, and not just focusing. We have this deficit focus, especially with people of color. But how about asset framing, and how about talking about what's positive and healing? And I do get on the sad stories and go into the dark places. But if you watch my podcast, it's always like, now how do we get over? And it's that upswing. So I follow, in my mind, like a therapy session. We start off with, okay, these are the goals, and this is what we want to get accomplished. And then let's get in there. Let's get our nails a little dirty. Let's get, up to our knees in it. And now let's come on out. And each therapy session goes that way. And so that's how my podcast episodes flow. And so I just did it. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I don't know how to do this. I had my friend Gary. He's a great engineer. He just kind of showed me how to use StreamYard. He taught me in a few minutes. I was like, okay. I'm a quick study. So I was like, I'll just play around with it, figure it out, and start doing it. And people were like actually saying, yes, I'll come on your podcast. I was like, why? Okay. You're saying yes. So I'm just talking to them and interviewing them. And next thing you know, I'm becoming more comfortable in front of my camera and the microphone. And then I was talking to my dean, a social worker, and I said, what if we brought it here? So that was after, pandemic, we came back. So I did it for about a year, maybe 8 months to a year. Then I took a little hiatus. We got back to campus, and I just really felt that pull again, and I said, what if we brought it to campus and open it up to students and the surrounding area? And she was like, yes. I was like, wait, you said yes? So then again, I was like, I know what I'm doing. And then I met you, and I met Ron and Mary, and y'all all were like, oh, of course we'll help you. And you just kind of jumped in and helped. So that's what it's for. I mean, we talk about things like depression, anxiety, autism, imposter syndrome is a big one that we were discussing. And sometimes I do solo acts where I'm just talking. I'm talking as a therapist. I'm talking about some things, some helpful tips and things like that. Or I'll bring on a guest, or I'll bring on an expert or a student, and we'll just talk. But the talking really is, I'm taking my teaching outside of the classrooms, and I'm putting it in a microphone and in the airways, and just hoping that I'm reaching and helping people, helping them to heal, because when you heal, it overflows onto everybody else around you. And so that's the whole concept of the show. And I was like, that's it. That's what I'm doing it for.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, before we hit our artist spotlight, as always, we hit on greatest life advice. So, what is the most important thing that you've learned throughout your life that you want to pass on to everybody watching and listening?
Yes, I have a couple gray hairs, and so I got a little bit of wisdom. I have a lot of advice, but I think what I'm going to share with y'all is you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be okay all the time. That's where imposter syndrome comes from. When you look and say, this high standard, I should be here. I must be right there. Why ain't I doing that like they are? And so all that comparing causes you to have anxiety and depression and things. And so I would say, stop reading other people's scripts or adopting other people's script. You write your own script. This is your production. Your life is your production. And so if you don't write your own script, other people will grab a pen and write it for you. And next thing you know, you're like, I'm doing this. Why am I doing this? Or I'm with this person. Why am I with this person? Because you allow someone to take your pen. So bottom line, write your own script. This is your production. And don't look at anybody else's script because it's not the same play. It's not the same production. It's your production. And so you write it and you follow what you know you need to do, and you'll be successful and fulfilled every time.
See, I got a little gloss on my forehead because you were spitting fire right there. I got a little hot up in here. But now we're going to be transitioning over to our artist spotlight. This week, I'll be playing Lonely by the band Dog Meat out here in Pittsburgh. I hope y'all enjoy.
Smoking, gone with the wind, I'm blowing. I try to talk, but I fall flat. Nothing to mention.
Hope y'all enjoyed this week's artist spotlight. You were hearing Lonely by Dog Meat PGH. All of their artist links will be in the description. Their Instagram, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, all of the above. You'll be able to find it down in the description below. Now, getting into the second half of this week's episode, we'll be playing on a new concept this season of themes month to month. And for the month of September, it's strength in diversity. On this podcast, we have people who talk about things that nobody else really covers that deserve attention. And today, Dr. Toya Jones is going to be speaking on teaching and mental health in marginalized communities to play into this theme. So, Dr. Toy, I leave the floor open to you.
Thank you so much, Ian. I just need y'all to know I'm having so much fun today. So I just had to put that in there. Yeah, I want to talk about mental health and marginalized community. And when I say that, I'm talking about Black and brown folks. I'm talking about queer people, and I'm talking about gender, especially the marginalized gender, women, cis women, but trans women, all of the above. So I tell my students a lot of times, you can have a niche, and you should, because the things that attract you or the things that you need to advocate for, and that you're ready to like, what, who said what, about. And so the who said what, that's advocating. So you got to be on it, and you need that strength and that power behind it, especially when your identity has a bunch of benefits and power with it. And so I know who I am, and I know what I bring along with it, and I know my strengths. And so using those strengths to really give voice to the topics that people are like, no, thank you, I'd rather not talk about. And that's violence. That's trauma. Trauma has grown as far as trauma education. I'm glad to see that. Sometimes people are like, well, you were talking about trauma a long time ago. Like, yeah, but I'd say join me in on this talk. There's unfortunately enough trauma to go around for us all to be experts in talking about it. But the way I feel and how passionate I feel about folks healing from trauma, I know that, okay, this is my jam. This is what I should be doing. So I'm gonna rock out to it. I'm talking about, just today we can narrow it down. I'm a trauma therapist for children and families, teenagers. I specialize preteens and teens. All the people that a lot of times adults are like, oh my goodness,
How would deal with this one?
Yes. And I'm like, bring them here. These is my people. I'm a behaviorist. I love watching behaviors. I love watching the nature channel because that's just behaviors. That's what did that chimp just do? It's really interesting to me. And so I started out, working with domestic violence, sexual assault survivors, volunteering while I was an undergrad. And I said, oh, this is what I want to do. This is so helpful, and it helped me to understand and help me not to judge folks. Now I'm on the board. It's like my life makes so many full circles. Now I'm on the board of Women's Center and Shelter. I love every single staff. The executive director is so focused and so passion driven. All of the executives, that they're so mission driven, and so it's such an easy pairing for me to say, well, you want me on the executive board? It was more of an honor for me, to be on a board like that that's doing so much good work in the community. And so, that full circle, just helping folks that find themselves in an intimate partner relationship, violence, and they don't know how they got there, or not aware of what the red flags and signs are, and because they've gone through it generationally and they've witnessed intimate partner violence, and they don't know how to get out of it. And I really like talking about that, because a lot of people have these stigmas of folks that are in intimate partner relationships, like they're stupid and they shouldn't be in that. And why would she stay with him? And first of all, it's not always she and him. Second of all, it's not always a choice. There is a certain level of captivity, mental captivity that goes on, but a lot of physical hostage and captivity goes on. And so for people to understand that a lot more helps them then to help people that are in their lives. And so not abandoning that person that is in a domestic violence relationship, or even the unhealthy that's starting to progress to physical and mental and verbal violence, even starting off with just little, like just being controlling, just standing in your way when you're trying to walk. You're like, hey, let me go, that kind of thing. Or being like, where were you? Or why didn't you tell me where you were going? Okay, well, that's okay to a certain point, but now you're like asking me everywhere I go and everything I do and what I had on, and like, this is controlling, or you're controlling the money, or you're cheating, but then you're manipulating. Like these are all forms of abuse. And to start talking about that early with people, the education is key to eliminating a lot of pain along the way. And so my poor kids know probably all this stuff. They know every part of the body, because I teach about sex assault, and being a therapist, with sex assault survivors, children telling me about the horrible things, how adults violated their bodies, and being a homicide therapist, listening to mothers talk about how they lost their sons to homicide, and how they lost their loved ones, their boyfriends, their, father of their children, just things like that. A lot of times people are like, how can you sit and hear it? And I think, how can they go through it? Like, how are they going through it? They deserve someone to sit and hear it and be able to work through it and help them. So that's been my life's journey. I don't see myself doing anything different. I don't want to do anything different.
Go back and say that again
What's that?
about they deserve somebody to be there to
They
hear it.
deserve somebody to be there to hear it. Going through, and I want to say, can you imagine? But a lot of, your listeners, a lot of folks that I talk to, people don't know what they have gone through. They just see the behavior. Well, why are they always like this? And why did they do that? And why they say that? Or why they overreact and do, you don't know what they've gone through. And so to have been victimized and violated in whatever way that might be, that could have been, someone broke in your house, or you were physically attacked, or, sexually abused, or you lost someone to violence, or some, any of that can make you vulnerable to anything that reminds you of what happened that horrible time. And so I call them triggers. Um, you can be triggered by sounds and smells, and taste, and people's movements, sudden movements. Like, hey, be cool. Or I gotta have my back to the wall. Or, I always had that uncle that was jumpy. Well, because he was a gunshot victim, and just things like that. You never know what people go through. And so because they've gone through, such tough and tumultuous times, how dare me think that I can't sit and listen to what they've gone through and try to help them in whatever tools I have. So they deserve, from going through such, horrible situation, they deserve someone to listen, and they deserve someone to care. What I've noticed, being a therapist for so long, that people don't have people that care about them. They don't have people that care enough to listen, or just, how you doing, but really don't mean it. I say, how you doing, and I really mean it. And people, you know what, I'm not doing that great. I'm like, okay, tell me about it. I really want to hear if you're not doing that great. Not, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm fine. Especially our culture, we are quick to, I'm good, I'm good. You're like,
we like being personal. Like, we keep our things personal.
That's right.
We don't share.
Yeah, but there's history why we do that, because if we share too much in a Black culture, that could mean our children get taken away. That could mean we get sold off to slavery. That could mean we get beat. That could mean,
somebody coming to your home uninvited.
Come on. That's exactly right. And so, even though I'm a social worker and I know caseworkers and I know the job they do, they're feared a lot with people in the Black community and people of color, because of the stigmas, that we're trying to take your children away. So we have that, what stays in what goes on at home stays in the home. We're not talking about it. We'll talk about it at the kitchen table. We're not going to therapy. We got Big Mama on such and such as the therapist. But it's, there's Black and brown therapists like me out there. There's so many. My friends are doing fabulous work, and these things we could be healed from. And the community can be educated about what does it really mean to be, a survivor of a crime, and, and how to heal through that. It's not a life sentence. And that's, a lot of times society will think that's a life sentence. If you've been raped, if you've, gone through someone being killed or beaten or something, that's a life sentence. Well, yes, it stays with you for life, but you can heal. There's a certain point of healing that you can get to, where you then know how to, okay, now I know how to put this situation in its right position. It's like that game, little babies will play it. You put the circle in the circle, the triangle in the triangle. Trauma, you're like trying to jam the triangle into the circle. You're like, it's not fitting. I can't understand. And what healing from trauma looks like is, now you're like, the triangle goes here. Circle goes here. And sometimes you'll get triggered, you get jumbled up, and you're like, circle, square, circle. Wait a minute. I learned these tools. I learned these coping methods. Circle goes here, triangle goes here. Okay, I got it. And that's what the, healing from trauma is all about. So that's been my journey, ever since. I mean, I want to say about 20 years now I've been talking this talk,
Mhm.
and just trying to educate the community, trying to educate my community and educating the community at large, and then my classroom and just people that I encounter. A lot of times, you talked about spidey senses before. I can tell that people have gone through, trauma, and I think it's because I'm here to say, okay, this is some things that you can try, or this is someone you can get connected with. And I literally have in my phone, like, I'm not a directory, but I have a directory of therapists through the
Mhm.
city. And
Those are your
people,
Avengers. Yeah.
yes. And I'll just, okay, try this person. I'll just, just hook people up and just help people get connected and get into, maybe a group or with an individual, or EMDR, CBT. These are all just different methods. There's so many different methods of healing that if one didn't work, then you throw that out, try another one. There's so many. So you don't stop trying,
Mhm. So on the topic of education, I find in my personal experience that most people who go to therapy know that they should go to therapy,
Yeah.
or they know what therapy is and they're encouraged to go to therapy. But many of the people who need it most they have the stigma against therapy.
Yeah.
So when it comes to education, how do you reach those people?
Yeah. This is a great question. I start with what you're experiencing, because if you go straight to, you need therapy, it makes you defensive.
Mhm.
No, I don't need therapy. I can do it on my own. I
Mhm.
got my girl. I got my dudes. I got my family. Yes, you do have them. And a good therapist is going to make sure that they are in place, and they're educated, and they're helping you along the healing journey. But what I say to, like, what people will say, what do I say? I know my son needs some therapy, or I know my spouse needs therapy, or, I'll say, look at the behaviors and tell them what you see. I notice you're not sleeping. I notice that you're crying. I notice you get really angry. And we were just talking about, crayons. I don't know.
Mhm.
We're talking about what to have for dinner, and you just got really upset, and it didn't match. And I'm worried about you. Just come from a place of caring and concern, but also saying, this is what I see. I see you hurting. I see you suffering. You don't have to hurt. You don't have to suffer. There are ways that you can get relief. And I use the example of, like, if you ever hurt your leg. I sprained my ankle one time. I'm gonna tell you how. I was wearing these really high stilettos and stepped in a crack, and I sprained my ankle. And I remember it hurt so bad. And I remember, like, trying to ice it and trying to limp on it. And after a while, I had to say, okay, this is not healing properly on its own. I need to go to the doctors. So you're not going to just walk around in pain until it gets swollen, infected, don't heal right. Now my bone's crooked in my foot and all this. You wouldn't do that for a physical part of your body. You go to a doctor, you go to a specialist, and make sure that they x-ray it and look at it. And they were able to tell me, oh, you need this. You need to wrap this way. You need to be on crutches. You need to do all of this in order for it to heal correctly. If a doctor said you have a heart condition, you shouldn't be doing this extracurricular activity. You're not going to go out there and run around the block. You're going to listen to what the doctor says. You're going to do these methods. You're going to build your heart muscles back up. You're going to take the medication, and you're going to get well. Why don't we treat our brains the same way we treat our bodies? Like, who told us to neglect our mental health?
Mhm.
Who told us to do that? Well, we got to unwrite that script. This is not okay. We have to take care of our mental health, because if we don't, then we pass this down to generation. We pass it down. We pass down the message. Don't take care of your brain. Don't take care of your mind. It's not as important as making money for the man, or making money for the agency or the company. And it's like, not. That's not the way we need to be wired, because we're no good for anyone if we can't be good for ourselves. Once we are really putting in ourselves and nourishing us and loving us, then we spill over and love and nourish and take care of everybody around us. When you don't have anything left, forget it. You can't do anything for anyone. So I can't be a good mom to my kids or a good wife to my husband, a good friend to my homies. I can't do any of that unless I'm taking care of Toy first. So that's what I talk about. Like, you don't have to feel this way. You can feel better. Will you completely get back to the person you were before this happened to you? No, this is a new person now. And this new person can feel joy and healing and happiness and direction and be able to function and all those things. But trying to get back to the old person that you were before this happened, well, that's impossible, because now you have such a big knowledge of what people can do and how people can act to people. It's like, people can be evil. Yeah, they can. Horrible things can happen to good people. Yep. That's not what we want to believe. Like, I didn't do anything. You didn't do nothing, and it still happened to you. Why? And that can challenge your spirituality. That can challenge how you feel about the people around you. You should have helped me. You should have been this, should have been that. So working through that with someone that can help and know, and they're not from the family, that's usually the best thing. And you gotta match up with them, because we're people, we're personalities. Somebody might come to me like, "Oh, you're too hyper." I need somebody a little bit more mellow, like my brother Ian over here. And so then you're gonna go ahead and switch up and match up. So I make sure I connect people the best I can, because I don't practice every day anymore. A lot of the things I do is working with people in the community and working with, my nonprofit and things like that. So yeah, that has to be the way. We have to prioritize our mental health, because nobody else will. Who's going to prioritize your mental health? As soon as you crash, they'll be looking for a replacement for your chair. It's you are replaceable to outsiders, but you're not replaceable to the people that truly, really love you.
I think it's very ironic how we're quick to fix physical issues, but we wouldn't even be aware of said physical issues if not for the brain.
Come on. That's it. That's
Because
it.
what do you have if not your mind?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're quick to be like, oh, I got this pain in my back. Let me take some Motrin.
Mm-hmm.
Let me take this. We'll even go to chiropractors and physical therapy, and we'll do all of that. But as soon as my mind hurts, something happens to me, and it should hurt. I lost a really close friend of me. I learned so much from her. And I was talking about the families that I learned from. She lost her son. Her name is Valerie Dixon. She lost her son to homicide many years, even before we met. And we met working with survivors of crime and working with homicide survivors. And she taught me so much. So she passed away a few months ago. And I was like, like, what you doing leaving here? That's my homie. I know all of the stuff to get through this. It's right there. But I'm going through the grieving process, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I need to hurry up and get out of this and snap out, snap out of it, and come on, girl. And no, sit down, take a couple days off, and really just remember her. Remember the light that she put on this earth. Her light is never going to dim. Her light's so bright, it's still here. It's still with us all. She touched so many. I mean, she touched thousands and thousands of people. And so going through that and realizing the knowledge that I have about grieving, the knowledge that people will have when they're getting with a good therapist or getting in a good group and learning these tools. Sometimes you don't do them right away, but then you can be reminded by the people around you. And I was reminded, say what now? You're the therapist. Like, they had to get on me. It don't happen that quick. I was like, dang it. Let me go get a slush. Think about my friend,
Now, last topic to really touch into. Now, this is very complex, so I know you could go on forever, and that this is simply going to be a little bit of a simplification. But Speaking specifically to marginalized communities, what role does identity play in mental health?
Ooh, yeah, we could go down that
I
hole,
know, I
right?
know.
All right, all right. Quick and simple. We are socialized to believe that we are not top shelf, that we are not worthy, that we are not glittery gold, platinum, and we come second, third, eighth. And so I believe, internalized racism, socialization to believe I'm lesser than, all of these things causes me to not turn internally and give myself some kind of evaluation. How are you for real? So we're always showing up as being the strongest, strong Black woman. I am a strong Black woman. My mama's a strong Black woman. All my aunties are strong Black women. My grandmother was the strongest Black woman. But we don't know how to be vulnerable, and we don't know how to just show some pain and say, hey, I would like some help. And why do I come from a lineage of strong Black women? Well, because we have to be. Society, um, racism, white supremacy, all of those things say, well, you have to be, because if you show up as weak, you're going to be taken advantage of.
Mhm.
Weakness. Oh, wait, I saw a little spot that I could dig in there. That's oppression. So we've not been conditioned to love on ourselves to the point of wholeness, and we have to change that. We change our own narratives, we change our own production. So and Black men don't, that's a whole nother podcast. I remember saying one time to someone, I've never seen my dad cry except one time, I think, when twice, his sister died and his brother died, and he was so close to them, and that's it. As far as showing that emotion, I was thought, like, my dad is so strong, he's the strongest man on earth,
I was gonna say, to be a Black man, you're at the worst intersection, because as men, we're told to keep our emotions inside.
That's right.
And as a Black man, you have it 1,000 times worse.
That's it. That's it. And how can you heal from a situation that's happened to you if you're not even talking about it, because it's not okay for you to even tell that you were sexually assaulted when you were a little boy? Like, it's not okay in society. Keep quiet. And it's been better. I mean, it is a lot better than it was 20 years ago when I started practicing, but it ain't good. But in our Black community and the people of color, I mean, my Latinx community and my Asian community, we are in that marginalized community that says that we have to be smarter, better, faster, like whatever, stronger, stronger, stronger. And we're not allowed to have a moment of, I'm not okay. So we have to rewrite that for ourselves. Like, we got to do it. And if it's one person at a time, then it's going to be the starfish effect, because it's going to mean everything in the world to that starfish that I throw back into the ocean that was in the sand. It's going to mean that. Or we get on platforms like podcasts and TV shows and talk about it and normalize taking care of your mental health. Normalize it. This is what you do first. If you're in an airplane, what's the instructions they give you? Put the mask on yourself first, then on the child. And that's what we have. We have to absorb that concept that I'm taking care of myself so that I can take care of the people around me, and that now I'm passing down generational mental wealth. That's what I do, not passing down trauma, you know? So
Now,
that's a little bit.
before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to get across to the audience?
I thank people for taking the time to listen, to podcasts like this that will help improve yourself. That means that you are prioritizing yourself and you're saying, I need some areas of improvement, or I'm sitting back and just being entertained for a second, or I'm being educated for a minute. That's all self-care. Self-care is a big old buzzword now, and we're supposed to go out jogging, and that's self-care. Well, that is not to me. What is self-care to me? That's music. That's being around fun people. That's laughing. I love to laugh. I think I'm funny. I think everybody around me's funny, and that's that's medicine. Taking care of yourself to the point where you're going to the therapist or the doctor or whatever. That's all self-care, but it's all of it. And so I want to thank folks for listening. I want to invite you to listen to my podcast, Healing Overflow with Dr. Toy. If you found something that was kind of helpful, I got a bunch of stuff over there. Maybe click through what's relevant to you, share with others. I just think it's important to keep on healing and helping others to heal as well.
With absolutely no bias from my end, you will learn a lot about yourself and a lot of how to interact with the world around you from listening to Healing Overflow with Dr. Toy. So as always, every single episode on the show, we've had it linked in the description. Definitely a link to click on for this episode. Now, thank you for coming along for this ride for season 3, episode 1 of the Let's Talk Social Innovation podcast. And we are signing off. Peace out, everybody.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.